Hello, Accelerated Math 6-7 students. We are still working in Module 4, and we are going to start Lesson 12. Lesson 12 today is called Writing and Evaluating Expressions with Addition and Subtraction. Writing and Evaluating Expressions with addition and subtraction. Okay, and let's take a look at the iPad very quickly for that, and here we have it. So, writing and evaluating expressions with addition and subtraction. Okay, so our goal for today. Today we will write expressions using addition and subtraction. The question that I want you to be thinking about is, when choosing a variable to represent units, what must be remembered about the variable? Okay, so the first thing that I would like you to do is let's take a look at a possible example of what you might see in some of your practice problems. Writing expressions. So here's an example of something that you might see. Mrs. Nelson is 72 inches tall. Mr. Bodway is 4 inches taller than her. How tall is Mr. Bodway? Okay, so some of you are already thinking, okay, well, that was really, really easy. But what you are working on in this lesson is actually writing expressions that involve addition and subtraction. And after you write those expressions, you may be asked to evaluate them. And remember, evaluate means to solve. So I'm going to move this up a little tiny bit so that we can work with some paper. So the first thing that I would like you to do, as it says on your notes, is first use a tape diagram. What variable will you use? What does it stand for? So if we're looking at Mrs. Nelson is 72 inches tall. Mr. Bodway is 4 inches taller than her. How tall is Mr. Bodway? So if we're using a tape diagram, we're trying to figure out how tall Mr. Bodway is. And so the variable that we're looking for is we're looking for a variable that will actually match the information that we're seeking. So we wouldn't necessarily just choose a random variable. We want to use one that when we see it, we know that that's what it's standing for. So Mr. Bodway's height. I want you to think about it like that. So if we think about it as Mr. Bodway's height, we could probably use the letter H, okay? And the reason that we would use the letter H is because the letter H is what height starts with, and so that's what we could try. So if we're using a tape diagram, we know that Mr. Bodway is 4 inches taller than Mrs. Nelson, okay? So we're going to say that this whole thing right here is going to stand for H. Well, if we know that Mr. Bodway is 4 inches taller than Mrs. Nelson, then maybe what we could do is we could draw our tape so that this part right here represents Mrs. Nelson. And how tall is Mrs. Nelson? 72 inches, that is correct. Okay, and then it says that Mr. Bodway is 4 inches taller than her, so we need to put another 4 inches in here. So now we know that this tape diagram right here can represent Mr. Bodway's height, and H is what is standing for height. And then now, after you do your tape diagram, it's very simple to see how tall is Mr. Bodway. Well, you all can tell me right now that Mr. Bodway is 76 inches tall. That is correct. And that's all that you have to find. So what your focus is today in your lesson is that you are going to have to write addition or subtraction expressions that are represented by word problems, and then they may ask you to evaluate them. And remember, evaluate means to solve. So if we wrote this as an expression, we could write 72 plus 4 equals H. This part being the expression, okay, and this whole piece right here being the equation so that you can evaluate it and solve. Okay? And so that's something that you definitely have to keep in mind with what you're trying to do. All right, so let's go back to our goal. Our goal today, we will write expressions using addition and subtraction, which we did right there. And then when choosing a variable to represent units, what must be remembered about the variable? The answer to that one is that the variable represents very specific information, so you have to choose a good one. All right, that's it, my darlings. We'll do some more practice with this when you get into class. See you later. Bye.